The greatest storms do not merely break the weak, they reveal the unbreakable foundation of a nation built to endure. At the dawn of 2006, the United States stood at a precipice that few truly understood, basking in the sunlight of a housing boom that seemed destined to last forever. Across every suburb and skyline, the American dream was being sold as a guaranteed investment, fueled by a complex web of financial engineering that even the most seasoned experts struggled to map. It was a time of boundless optimism, where the sound of construction filled the air and the belief in perpetual growth was the heartbeat of the economy. Yet, beneath this shimmering surface, the first microscopic fractures were beginning to form, setting the stage for a transformation that would test the very character of the American people and eventually prove their remarkable capacity for reinvention. As we moved into 2007, the whispers of unease grew into a low hum that could no longer be ignored by the titans of Wall Street. The subprime mortgage market, once hailed as a miracle of modern finance that opened doors for millions, began to buckle under its own weight as interest rates climbed and home prices started their first significant descent in decades. It was a slow-motion collision where the complexity of mortgage-backed securities turned into a labyrinth of risk that threatened to swallow entire institutions whole. People watched in disbelief as the high-stakes world of investment banking suddenly felt as fragile as a house of cards, but what was truly surprising was not just the impending fall, but the sheer scale of the global connectivity that would bring the world's financial heartbeat to a stuttering halt. By the time the calendar turned to September of 2008, the world witnessed a moment that would be etched into the annals of history as the ultimate trial of the modern era. The collapse of Lehman Brothers sent a shockwave through the global psyche, a financial earthquake that measured 10 on the Richter scale of economic stability. For a few terrifying weeks, the gears of global commerce threatened to seize entirely, leaving families and businesses wondering if the ground beneath them would ever be solid again. The panic was palpable, but in the depths of that darkness, a collective resolve began to stir. It was a moment of absolute vulnerability that forced a nation to look inward and find the grit required to prevent a total systemic failure, proving that even when the pillars of finance crumble, the spirit of the workforce remains the ultimate collateral. The response to this unprecedented crisis was a series of maneuvers that would have seemed like science fiction only years prior, as the government and the Federal Reserve stepped into the breach with the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act. Hundreds of billions of dollars were mobilized in a desperate bid to provide liquidity to a parched system, a move that sparked intense debate but ultimately served as the floor for a falling economy. As the dust began to settle in early 2009, the true surprise emerged. The American economy did not just stop failing, it began the agonizingly slow process of healing. This era was defined by a quiet, fierce determination found in kitchen tables across the country, where families recalculated their futures and businesses leaned into a new, leaner reality that would eventually become the springboard for the longest economic expansion in the nation's history. Subscribe to this channel now so you do not miss your daily dose of audio history. And if you are finding this story valuable, please click the like button to support our work. While the headlines of 2009 and 2010 were often dominated by the high unemployment rates and the grueling recovery of the housing market, a technological revolution was quietly accelerating in the background. In the very shadow of the Great Recession, the seeds of the future were being planted by entrepreneurs who refused to let a downturn define their potential. This period saw the birth and rapid ascent of companies that would redefine how we live, work, and interact, from the rise of the smartphone era to the beginning of the sharing economy. It was a profound irony that during a time of such financial scarcity, the world was entering an age of unprecedented digital abundance, proving that American innovation is often at its most potent when the stakes are at their highest and the resources are most constrained. One of the most inspiring chapters of this recovery was the revitalization of the American automotive industry, a sector that many had written off as a relic of a bygone era. Through a combination of strategic restructuring and a renewed focus on efficiency and design, the giants of Detroit managed to pull themselves back from the brink of extinction. By 2012 and 2013, these companies were not just surviving, they were profitable and leading the way in new technologies. This comeback served as a powerful symbol of the broader national recovery, demonstrating that with the right balance of discipline and vision, even the most traditional industries could find a second wind. It was a testament to the American worker's skill and the enduring relevance of manufacturing in a world that was becoming increasingly intangible. As the decade progressed toward 2015, the United States began to experience a fundamental shift in its energy landscape that few had predicted during the dark days of the crash. The shale revolution, driven by advancements in horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing, transformed the nation from a major energy importer into a global powerhouse of oil and natural gas production. This newfound energy independence provided a massive strategic and economic tailwind, lowering costs for domestic manufacturers and creating hundreds of thousands of high-paying jobs in regions that had long felt left behind. It was a staggering reversal of fortune that added a new layer of resilience to the American economy, surprising global markets and reinforcing the idea that the nation's natural resources, coupled with its technological edge, remained a formidable combination. By 2016, the scars of the subprime crisis were finally fading into the background as the labor market reached a state of health that many economists had previously thought unattainable in the post-crash world. The unemployment rate continued its steady march downward, and for the first time in years, wage growth began to show meaningful signs of life for the average worker. The resilience of the American consumer, who had spent years deleveraging and rebuilding their personal balance sheets, became the engine of a steady, reliable growth cycle. What was perhaps most surprising during this mid-decade period was the sheer longevity of the expansion. It was a slow-burn recovery that lacked the volatility of previous booms, creating a sense of stability that allowed for long-term planning and renewed investment in the future. If you are enjoying this deep dive into the resilience of our history, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button so you never miss a chapter of the American story. The period between 2017 and 2019 represented a remarkable maturation of the American economic landscape, characterized by record-breaking milestones that defied the skepticism of the previous decade. The stock market reached heights that were once deemed impossible, driven by the massive earnings of technology companies that had become the new backbone of the global economy. More importantly, the benefits of this growth began to reach the furthest corners of the labor market, with unemployment rates for nearly every demographic group hitting 50-year lows. It was a golden era of job creation that proved the underlying strength of the American system could overcome even the most daunting structural challenges, provided it was given the time and the environment to heal and adapt. During these final years before the turn of the new decade, the United States also solidified its position as the undisputed leader of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The integration of artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and big data into every facet of commerce and daily life created a new paradigm of productivity. This wasn't just about silicon and software, it was about the fundamental way the American spirit of discovery was being channeled into digital frontiers. The surprise here was how quickly the new normal became integrated into the fabric of society, transforming everything from logistics to healthcare. This era showed that while the crisis of 2008 had been a trial of the old financial system, the years that followed were a celebration of a new, more agile American economy. The consumer confidence of 2018 and 2019 was a reflection of a nation that had successfully navigated a generational storm and come out stronger on the other side. People were not just spending, they were investing in their education, their homes, and their communities with a renewed sense of purpose. The housing market, once the source of so much pain, had stabilized into a more sustainable and rational component of national wealth. It was a period of profound rebalancing, where the excesses of the pre-crisis years had been replaced by a more grounded and resilient form of prosperity. Looking back, the short-term reflections of the subprime crisis were not just about the losses incurred, but about the lessons learned and the incredible capacity of a free people to course-correct in the face of adversity. As we reached the end of 2019, the American story was one of triumph over systemic fragility. The decade and a half that began with a housing bubble ended with the longest period of economic growth in the nation's history, a feat that required the contributions of millions of individuals working toward a common goal of stability and progress. The journey from the depths of 2008 to the heights of 2019 is a narrative of grit, innovation, and an unwavering belief in the possibility of a better tomorrow. It serves as a reminder that while the path of history is rarely a straight line, the trajectory of a nation built on the principles of hard work and ingenuity is always upward. The legacy of this era is not the crisis itself, but the magnificent, multi-year response that redefined the American dream for a new century. This period of 13 years proved that the American economy is not merely a collection of numbers and charts, but a living, breathing entity powered by the dreams and labor of its citizens. From the first warning signs in 2006 to the peak prosperity of 2019, we witnessed a cycle of destruction and creation that few other nations could have navigated with such vigor. The short-term reflections of this era showed us that while markets can be volatile and institutions can fail, the fundamental drive of the American people to build, to grow, and to protect their families is a force of nature. It is this drive that turned a potential collapse into a springboard for a technological and energetic renaissance that will continue to shape the world for decades to come. The importance of the 2008 crisis in the context of American history cannot be overstated, as it forced a fundamental rethink of risk and responsibility that strengthened the nation's core. In the years that followed, we saw a massive shift toward transparency and a renewed appreciation for the tangible assets that truly matter. The period of 2006 to 2019 will be remembered as a time when the United States looked into the abyss and decided to build a bridge across it instead of falling in. This bridge was constructed with the steel of the Midwest, the code of Silicon Valley, and the relentless energy of the American South, creating a unified front of progress that was as inspiring as it was effective. Looking at the reflections of this era in the short term, we see a nation that became more efficient, more technologically advanced, and more aware of its own strength. The growth seen in the late 2010s was not a fluke, but the hard-earned result of a decade of discipline and adaptation. It showed that the American system is uniquely designed to absorb shocks and transform them into fuel for the next great leap forward. The pride we feel in this history comes from the knowledge that every time the world expects the American story to reach its final chapter, the people find a way to write a new, even more ambitious volume. As the sun set on 2019, the United States stood as a beacon of economic resilience, having successfully bridged the gap between a broken past and a promising future. The transition from the subprime era to the digital age was complete, and the nation was once again firing on all cylinders. This journey taught us that while we cannot always predict the next crisis, we can always rely on the character of the people to overcome it. It is a history of overcoming the impossible, of turning fear into focus, and of ensuring that the flame of opportunity burns brighter than ever before. The story of the American economy from 2006 to 2019 is ultimately a story of every worker, every innovator, and every family that refused to give up when the going got tough. It is a narrative that should fill every heart with pride, for it demonstrates that our greatest days are not behind us, but are constantly being forged in the heat of our challenges. We have seen that the American spirit is not a fragile thing to be protected, but a powerful engine to be unleashed. As we move forward, let us carry the lessons of this remarkable era with us, knowing that we have the tools, the talent, and the tenacity to handle whatever history throws our way. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of the most transformative periods in our nation's history. Please subscribe to stay updated with our daily audio stories, and if this script inspired you, hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments below.